This is an astonishing discovery. This is actually just a map, a geological survey map of Avebury in the UK. And what's really interesting is it perfectly matches with a place on Mars called Cydonia. Cydonia, which means Giza, which means Giza. It's pretty interesting, right? So when you take that ordnance map that I showed you before, and you take this image from NASA, or the European Space Agency actually, and you look at the area called Cydonia, where the D&M pyramid is, that five-sided pyramid, and the famous face on Mars, and the other remnants up there in the corner, when you overlay it, all of a sudden, you get a perfect match down to the millimeter with all the anomalies. It matches perfectly. This is an overlay right here. So what happens is, Avebury, that field where the mounds are, is a representation of this same field or this area in Cydonia on Mars. How in the world did they make that connection? And then when you go to Deir Allah in Jordan, you discover that the face on Mars can only be seen from the sky. Hardly anyone ever knew this even existed, that even existed. It's pretty crazy stuff, that face is a representation of the same one that they discovered on Mars as well in the late 1970s. Now, we're going to look at this and we're going to the images next. So what's interesting is people say, well, where's these planets that these beings came from? Where's any evidence of any extra planets in our solar system? We have never heard of this before. Well, I mean, you can't trust the news too much, but there's a real astronomer that came on the news and said, hey, there's planets in our solar system that are there. He says even there's a solar system in our solar system. Let's listen to what he has to say.
12 VP 113, jokingly dubbed Biden. Get it? Corey Powell's editor-at-large for Discover Magazine in studio. How you doing, Corey?
VP Biden.
Right on.
There we go.
Correct on that. Two images show you. This is the arrow obviously pointing to it. But there are three dots on here. One is red, one is green, one is blue.
Right.
What's significant?
So this is the actual discovery image. Basically, two astronomers were looking, one little patch of sky very, very far away, looking for exactly this kind of thing. Stars don't move. Planets or anything that's like a planet does. So this is color-coded. This is what they saw on different nights. They're looking for one thing moving. They color-coded it to show that all these stars are staying still. This thing is moving, and the way it's moving...
So this is just one...
It's one object, color-coded.
Is Pluto on this?
Pluto's in a whole different part of the sky.
So this is way out there.
This is way out there. This is more than twice as far away as Pluto.
Unbelievable. Why does this matter, Corey?
Well, there are two ways you can look at it. I think I look at it first of all as an exploration question. That we know where we are on Earth. We've mapped our planet. Our solar system is still terra incognita. It's full of surprises. This object is something that astronomers said shouldn't even be there. There's a whole other solar system beyond the planets that we know that are full of these things that are sort of planets, sort of comets. Some of them they call dwarf planets. That's what they're calling this one. What we're seeing is we're seeing our neighborhood. We're seeing what's around us. And then the second part is we're seeing where we came from.
Go back to the other image, you guys, and we'll show, because we're over here on the left, right?
That's right. So we're over here.
Okay.
There's
Pluto's out here.
Yeah.
And this thing called Maki is way out here.
That's right. So that's another dwarf planet. If you want to find out where VP 113 or Biden is located, keep walking about another 30 feet that way.
Wow. We can see that far.
And this is the closest it gets this time. When it really gets cooking, it's 15 times as far away as Pluto.
That's incredible.
It takes 4,300 years to go around the sun.
I don't know how you know that, but I trust you. What is a dwarf planet?
So a dwarf planet, the fact that you hear weird terms like that is actually scientists saying there are things out there we don't really understand. It's a dwarf planet is kind of a catch-all term for something. It's round like a planet. It sort of looks like a planet, but it doesn't orbit in a regular way like all the planets that we knew growing up.
Would this be part of our solar system?
So it's part of our solar system.
Would it be outside?
It's a whole new zone. They're calling it the inner Oort cloud. You don't really need to know that. All you need to know is there really are these two solar systems. There's the solar system with the classical planets, and then there's this whole other zone that we haven't explored. Mm-hmm. And now they're saying because of how this new dwarf planet moves, that there may actually be an even bigger planet, something bigger than the Earth.
I guess that's the point I was going to.
Okay, I think I made my point. think I made my point. There's a lot going on out there that you have no clue what it is. How many people have ever heard of the planet Ceres? C-E-R-E-S. Good. That is the planet right after Mars in our solar system. There's more fresh water on Ceres than there is on Earth. C-E-R-E-S. You have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and then Ceres, and then the asteroid belt. That should be mainstream news nonstop. When we sent a mission past there with a probe, it took pictures of this planet a few years ago, and on the way towards it, the lights were on. And so they hurried up and tried to say, oh, it was just probably some ice particles. Then when we got to the backside, which would be the dark side, no sunlight at all, guess what? The lights were on. Then they tried to, we kind of figure out, we don't know what it could possibly be. Somehow the ice is glowing, maybe from radiation. No, people live there. That's what's going on. People are living up there. We keep trying to find planets that are 20 million and 30 million light years away and 7 million. Listen, let me tell you something. The people are living here are right above our heads. They're right above our heads. I talked about Atlantis being a civilization that was a ring city, but it also was a global civilization. When you analyze what happened to Atlantis, you begin to analyze what happened to Antarctica. The key to Atlantis lies in Antarctica, because Antarctica was in a different position, and it used to be one of the other capitals of this planet, where it was an Atlantean civilization. It's clear to see now that at some point we had a pole shift of the crust of the Earth. This is geological data. The Earth's crust, the tectonic plates, shifted and slipped. And when they slipped, Antarctica moved at a very rapid pace into the position it is now. And that caused a global flood, another global flood, which then destroyed what? Destroyed Atlantis and many of the other colonies that existed, coastal colonies that existed worldwide. Because when you move an entire continent at that rate of speed, you're talking about a global disaster. How do we know this? Well, as the animals are now being thawed out from the melting of the ice in Antarctica, and they keep cutting them open and checking them out, there's undigested food in their stomachs. Now, you tell me, as far as I know, if you feed an animal or even feed yourself, within a few hours, you're probably going to go to the bathroom and release that. So how can it be that hundreds of thousands of years later, these animals still have undigested food? That gives you an understanding of the rate of speed that they were frozen. They were flash frozen. When you move into a very cold region, very rapidly and very fast, the winds are going to continue to pick up at an astronomical speed. You're talking about a Category 5 hurricane in Florida, that would be like nothing. It's probably like a Category 20 hurricane. Probably one of the most powerful winds we've ever seen on the planet. And then you have the rushing water coming in to that cold region, freezing almost instantaneously. So you have now Antarctica. That's what happened to Antarctica. It was an Atlantean civilization, which is why there are megalithic pyramids there. One of them is, I think, 4 times larger than the one in Africa at Giza in Egypt. Imagine a pyramid 4 times larger than the one we call the Great Pyramid. That's not really the Great Pyramid. It's just one of many. And we can see the megalithic structures, the evidence of them all around the world, all the same building technique, no matter where you go on this planet. So we know that this culture was a global civilization. These are pyramids right off the coast of Cuba and Florida, underneath the water. That pyramid there, the larger one in the middle of those 3, is larger than the one in Egypt. Underneath the water, right off the coast. And still there right now, well known and well documented. So we're talking about, this is a book cover, by the way. I just love this book cover because when you look at the ancient texts and tablets, there's always these battles between human beings. Oh, the Anunnaki were all black. Oh, no, they were all white. Oh, no, they were all this, red. And no, this is what the Anunnaki were. When you read the text, the more ancient scriptures and texts and tablets you read, you discover that these people were multiracial people. They came from all over the place. They came from Sirius. They came from Orion. They came from Aldebaran. They came from Arcturus. They came from all these other areas in the Pleiades. They came from everywhere. And as they describe different instances of them in different places, they looked totally different. Their skin color was described as totally different. Their eyes and their hair was described as totally different, right? So it wasn't just one race of people that came to this planet. There were many races. And that would also explain why we have many races of people here on the planet, because these people put genetic markers on us. And that's why there's a 2% variance in our DNA that would have taken millions of years to occur. First of all, Neville Thompson, he just got an award for Space Anomaly Hunter of the Year at the Forbidden Conscious Awards in Miami, Florida. And his work is unparalleled in this field. But Cairo means the city of Mars. That's interesting that Cairo actually means the city of Mars, when we find a lot of anomalies on Mars that resemble anomalies on Earth. This image is about 3 miles wide. That's not tiny. Can you imagine a face that big? You can only see it from space. This is a ziggurat image that I cleaned up, which is in a book by Mike Barra. It's a famous book. That ziggurat of Earth, the bottom, but the ziggurat at the top, that's from Mars. Now, it's a little bit pixelated because it's spread apart on the big screen. Maybe from that distance back there, you can clearly see that it's not just a pile of rocks here. This right here is definitely not a rock. It has geometry, it has shape, it has structure to it, and it doesn't match the surrounding terrain. We don't know what it is. This is pretty interesting. Again, a shape that we don't know what it is. It could kind of look like biological remains, or we don't know. Maybe it could be just a coincidence. Again, something that just appeared to be out of place. Another interesting carving here, or it looks like a carving. I can't say that it is because I'm not there, but I can just tell you that it doesn't make any sense with the amount of detail that we find when we blow these things up. Interesting. Look at the top right. That's a pretty interesting rock. I mean, it kind of looks like those little aliens that they put out here in the lobby. I mean, it's pretty crazy that this will be up there. This is a pretty interesting rock again. A rock on top of a rock that has a strange looking face on it. Could it just be a coincidence? It's possible. But a lot of these anomalies happen within less than a quarter of a mile range. We can find 50, 60 things that look like this in a very small area. Another amazing rock that has a lot of what looks like faces on it coming out of the mud. Are they faces? They're just very interesting. Look at this. I don't know, man. I wish I could find a rock like that on Earth. I just can't seem to find one. That doesn't appear to be a rock whatsoever. It appears to be created somehow by someone. This is a crazy anomaly to have right here. It's kind of blurry because it's really, really big, but I don't know. I don't know if that's a statue or it's just a very incredible human-looking rock. Here goes a structure that's partially dilapidated here on top of a hill. It's one of the most famous anomalies out there. You can clearly see that this is not a rock, that it's some type of a built structure at some point in the past. And this kind of almost looks like it could be used as maybe what we would call on Earth a weapon, or maybe it could be something else. It could be a piece of a tool or a broken piece of some device. This one is pretty famous. It was on Ancient Aliens. Martine Graney discovered this, one of our greatest anomaly hunters. You can clearly see the ornate engravings on it. And you can clearly see that it ain't a rock. I'm sorry, but that's not a rock. That's something else. It's laying on its side. It's got two things coming out of the bottom of it, maybe how it used to stand up on something. But to me, it kind of resembles maybe some type of a statue. Wow, so blurry because it's so huge. But again, another face out of the stone with a crown on top. That was kind of hard to see. Here's another face coming up out of the mud, more like a statue that was covered by mud, only the top of the head sticking out. Another thing on the side of a mountain that just didn't look like a rock. It kind of looks artificially made. It's just laying there. Doesn't match any of the surrounding terrain. More weird stuff here. I mean, if you look to the right side there, that one with something which looks like something on top of a head. It's just a weird design. Could those be rocks? Could those be carvings? Interesting. Another carved face out of a rock. Pretty interesting. You got Zeus over there. Something that looks like Zeus. What in the world is that doing carved onto that hill there? This one looks kind of scary. Look inside the mouth. There's something in the mouth. There's something inside the mouth, which is pretty crazy. It's got teeth and it's got a little face inside the mouth itself. It's a really scary image. Maybe they have Halloween up there. I don't know. All right, look at this. This is a pyramid on the moon. This is actually a pyramid on the moon, a very famous pyramid on the moon. It's very easy to see, very clear to see the design. Other structures that have been found on the moon, large dome structures. All you do is take the contrast off of some of these images and you can begin to see things that have geometry to them that don't belong there. Another incredible face here that you can see on Mars. This face looks more African styled, which is pretty interesting. Another head, you can see I just blew it up and kind of put it in the top so you can see clearly what it is. I mean, that's pretty strange. What kind of rock looks like that? It's kind of looks like Obama. Kind of looks like Obama to me. Here's another one. It kind of looks like an indigenous native from the Americas. What's interesting, like I said earlier, when I showed you that book image, these people weren't just one race of people, and you can see representations of all races in some of these Mars images, which is pretty interesting. According to the Ijiji, there was a civilization on Mars, and that's in the Enuma Elish, those stone tablets that I showed you earlier that are located right here in the British Museum. Say hi to your cousins. I don't know what these are, but they just don't look like rocks to me inside of this whatever that is. An interesting discovery I made years ago. These are blurry because sometimes you're zooming in from a quarter of a mile away. And of course, I try to obfuscate the images, but you can clearly see that there's something there that doesn't kind of match the stones. Look at the construction technique that's similar to Peru on Earth. You can see Mars, and then you can see Peru. It's the same exact construction technique. Why would that be? We're talking about an interplanetary civilization. We're not talking about a small group of people in a ring city. It's much bigger than that. And why would there be Ankhs? We found about 16 Ankhs laying on the surface of Mars. Why would there be Egyptian Ankhs on Mars like the ones we have here on Earth? Because again, the two civilizations were directly connected. There's another Ankh. I don't know if you can see it. It's so stretched out now that the screen is so huge. But right where that arrow's pointing, there's another Ankh there laying on the ground. Can you see it? That's crazy. What is that doing there? What is an Ankh doing on Mars? Look at this. That's a weird image. What is that doing there? All I did was just take the contrast off and expand it so you can see what it is a little bit clearer. But again, it doesn't match the surrounding rocks. And this is pretty interesting. The god of war. What is this doing on Mars? And we give the source images for everything. What is that doing there? Why would that be on Mars? Look at this. I discovered this years ago. Looks like a typical home with a gable roof, sitting out in the middle of the Martian desert with windows and all. Another structure here, clearly visible, sitting out in the middle of the desert, taken from the top. The image was taken from the top of a hill looking down. An ornate object, which is pretty interesting, discovered by Martine Graney. That's pretty ornate. Do you have rocks like this in your garden? I'm just asking for a friend. I've never seen a rock like this in the garden before. One of my very first discoveries. This is a Washington.edu official image from the University of Washington. And I found this image. It's called the Presidential Panorama, taken by Mars Pathfinder a very long time ago. And all we did was expand the images so you could see exactly what was there. Nothing was altered, nothing was changed. I call it a technology, what looks to be like a sphinx and more technology. I could be wrong, but as far as I can tell, those don't belong there. There's also something else that doesn't belong here, but I didn't want to categorize it. This object right here doesn't look like a rock either, but I didn't want to mess with it. This is pretty interesting. Look at this. That's on Mars, guys. All source images are always available on our Mars group on Facebook. We have 14 Mars groups. Another incredible image found by Linda McClendon on Mars. This is a pretty interesting image here. I don't know what this is, a grouping of rocks that look like people or just rocks. Could be. But they're pretty interesting. Look at this. Kind of looks like a deceased body. Look at this object. It's really massive. This was a big object. I don't know what it was, but if you can see, it has real geometry to it. Don't know exactly what it is, but it was just sitting there. And it wasn't, if you could see the full-size image, which I couldn't fit in here, it's not really touching the ground. And of course, we have the 5-sided pyramid that's located at Cydonia, which I was talking about earlier. You can see the mathematics here. This isn't just wind blowing randomly to blow this thing into this shape. This is built by hands, highly sophisticated, knowledgeable hands. And this one here, another object that I discovered, I think this was is this McMurdo? It might be McMurdo Valley, years ago. You can see it off in the distance on the right. You can see that it has structure, that is standing up off the ground on some type of legs, that is some type of a built structure, that is not a rock. And one of the most famous ones, again, this image was analyzed by over 100 anomaly hunters, and every single one came back with the same exact conclusion, that we may be looking at 2 deceased people here on the surface of Mars, as there was a global catastrophe there that destroyed virtually almost everything. And we know this because the Mars equator is shifted to a 45-degree angle. There was a pole shift of the crust and a global flood on Mars. Not only that, as I wrap up, there was a discovery on Mars. Xenon was discovered in the soil, and xenon was also discovered in the atmosphere in abundant amounts. What does that mean? Weapons-grade xenon is a direct result of nuclear weapons fire. That's what xenon does. And that's why Mars has that tint to it. You're looking at the results of a nuclear fallout from an ancient war that happened on Mars, and it happened between Earth, the Moon, and Mars. It was an interplanetary war that the Atlanteans engaged in, that has been written about in many ancient texts, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas, the Enuma Elish, the Atrahasis epic, and many, many, many more.